Oh shit, I forgot Oskar. This is why he can't bring me anywhere. So welcome back to the Moose Lady Academy Rune Introduction Part 4. And welcome back. Because here at Moose Lady Academy we do not believe in summer breaks. We will have quite an intense summer, I guess, because yeah, I'm excited to be back and I am really at a good place in life, and I'm very happy and excited to be back and talk to you guys about stuff that I think really matters and that is fun and that is interesting to learn about. So yes, Rune Introduction Part 4, let's go! Let's dive straight back into where we left off, basically. We were talking the last time about magical runes. I kind of want to start off there as well. Believe it or not, there is actually accounts from ancient Scandinavia, from the Viking Age, in runes about magical abilities. One of these examples is this stone, DR294 or DR294. It is also called the Baldringes stone, Baldringestenen. It is such a pretty runestone, like by its own. Even if you don't know what it says on here, it's so aesthetically pleasing and so pretty anyway. But I want to go over what it actually says and why that has anything to do at all with magic. Let's go through what it says and then I will give you my thoughts and reflections afterwards. It says like this, and I will put it up in runes for you on the screen. Torgel put dis kummel after Tume, spåman, Frodar's son, their father, a very good tegn. If you have seen any of my other videos about runes and runestones, you might already kinda recognize a couple of these words. I have left them in on purpose, so you're not mishearing me. Let's start with the word tegn. So the word tegn is a bit more debated than, for example, in the Anglo-Saxon history world, the word thane. It is not as clean cut with what tegn actually means. In Scandinavia, it is thought that it could mean, for example, a free farmer. It could be a so-called odal man. It could be a type of warrior or a man that is in close connection to the king. Then we have another thing to clear up. What is then an odal man? An odal man... Oh, wait, let's do this. Now we're being pedagogical here. I got the absolute worst whiteboard. I feel like... What is then an odal man? Is an old expression of a free farmer that has owned land and still uses that land through generation after generation without splitting the farmlands or the farm up in smaller pieces. That is what an odal man was, like a free farmer. Complete side note, but this odal expression still exists. It used to be a part of Swedish law, but I know that it is still a part of the Norwegian law base, the base of laws, you know what I mean? So the term odal is still very much being used in a law kind of sense in Norway. In Sweden, we have kind of gotten away from that. It's not a part of our, base of laws anymore. And while talking about it, because I have run into this many times online by now, that the expression odal would be linked somehow to being a follower of a group of people with weird political stances and weird empathy towards their fellow neighbors. It's actually not correct. Odal is the word for, the Odal rune, but also it is a term that has been used a lot in the Scandinavian countries and still are a part of Norway's base of laws, so to say. But that was a side note. Let's continue. And now, the word kummel that we can see in the beginning of this rune carving. Kummel, or kumler, more specifically, is an expression used to indicate that this is one out of several stone monuments that has been raised. So Tume, the father, he probably has a couple of stones raised for him, maybe with or without decorations. This wasn't that weird of a practice in the later part of the Iron Age. However, we haven't found these stones for Tume. One great example of this that I can pull up from memory is the Hunnestads monument. These is several stones, some with runes, some with pictures and runes, and some with just pictures carved onto them. And actually, just the other year, they found one of these monument stones that was gone for 300 years. Now to the main word that I want to talk about, which is spåman. This is where the magic comes in. So, spåman. Spådom in Swedish, in Scandinavian languages, means a prediction of the upcoming future. And spåman then, that is the word for a seer. So the word spå on this runestone, this indicates it is in relation to the father's Tume's title. So that he was a spåman, or that he was spåkunnig, that he was someone who could predict the future. And this translates into that he was knowledgeable within the art of prediction and all of that magical stuff. It was very important, important enough to actually forever memorialize this on his runestone. And this is where we will segue into Blotspån. So, Blotspån, what's that all about? If you've seen like these rune sets, for example, they became modern in the 1980s, and they are a way of also, like, you know, it's a form of tarot, kinda, almost. Like, is this new agey kind of thing. Think something similar, but you are carving or painting on wooden trays, like magical runes, that might not look exactly like the runes are supposed to look like. You know, maybe you make the Ty rune like 3 times and such. The pawns were supposed to be thrown out like that, and from there some kind of ritual were to take place. And also it is so important that I emphasize on this. Those rune sets, those modern ones that you see today, they have their origins in 1980s New Age kind of movement. These Blotspån that I'm talking about right now, these type of Blotspån that I'm talking about, they are not mentioned in ancient sources as well. There is one ancient source that is talking about something similar. It is just like, it is not clear enough to tell that yes, this is with 100% undoubtedly Blotspån we're talking about right now. And this is the source that comes from none other than Tacitus. And like, let me just emphasize on this, and I'm telling Oskar as well, it is wiser to say that we know less than we know more about these magical things going on in the ancient past. Religion, spirituality and stuff like that is very, very hard. We usually find clues in grave sites about these things, so just keep that in mind while I'm talking. But I just want to put that out there, that these things are very hard to say that it was like this or it was like that. It's impossible. The source about the suspected Blotspån comes from Tacitus Germania, that was written around the 1st century. And there is a mention of activities that are similar to the later usage of Blotspån. And Tacitus is thought to have come up somewhere in Germany. We're not 100% sure how far north Tacitus actually went, or whoever went in his place, so to say. He is the one credited for this work, but I'm not gonna slander Tacitus here without, you know, it could have been him, but it also could not have been him. For omens and the casting of lots, they have the highest regard. Their procedure in casting lots is always the same. They cut off a branch of a nut-bearing tree and slice it into strips. These they mark with different signs and throw them completely at random onto a white cloth. Then the priest of the state, if the consultation is a public one, or the father of the family, if it is private, offers a prayer to the gods, and looking up at the sky, picks up these 3 strips, one at a time, and reads their meaning from the signs previously scored on them. If the lots forbid an enterprise, there is no deliberation that day on the matter in question. If they allow it, confirmation by the taking of auspices is required. Although the familiar method of seeking information from the cries and the flight of birds is known to the Germans, they have also a special method of their own to try to obtain omens and warnings from horses. It could be Blotspån that Tacitus is actually talking about, but it also could be something similar to it. So from that magical context, we're gonna move on to a little less magical context, maybe, to bind runes. I know they're super popular. I actually have one tattooed on my hand. So let's see if I can make my own Bindrune for my own name. Maybe I will do something like that and something like that. Because in my name, see, I have two just like runes that goes like that, because my name is Elin, and E and E would be this bad boy right here. So and then we have the L sound, and then we have the N. So yeah, this is my official one. Let's take this away, this pathetic attempt. So a Bindrune is basically a rune where, for whatever reason, rune carvers have not wanted to spell out an entire word or a name. And it is believed it could have been used as a signature, it could have been used as a oopsie, an oopsie fixer, because you know, when you carve in a wood or when you carve in stones, it's not like you can come there with a little eraser and like, oops, I misspelled something here. So therefore you can sometimes find Bindrunes where the rune carver might have actually made an oopsie and like, oh, we just put this there. Then there's also Bindrunes in names, for example. There's a priest that has carved into, we call them lily stones. The lily stones come after the Viking Age. They are these beautiful carved stones with leaves and flowers on them. And there's one priest, he has also made a Bindrune. But there are absolutely Bindrunes that seem to be more intentional than to be a signature or an oopsie. It could be a signature in a way where the artist really liked the look of it and therefore chose to do it, but nonetheless they are very intentional. And one example of this is the Sörup stone from Denmark. If we go a bit north from Denmark and go back to Sweden with this stone. And this is SÖ 140, so SÖ 140. So this can be found outside of Nyköping. It is a complete mystery, this stone. And like, you know, the main text is not that hard to understand. It basically says, Sandar raised this stone after Joar or Ivar. Joar and Ivar. I've gotten this question actually from people who want to have their sons' names carved. The thing is that Joar and Ivar are carved in the same way. So there you go. If you have a son that you want to name Ivar or Joar, there is actually real historical sources for how to carve his name in runes. You're welcome. Anyway, let's continue. Their friend. No one births a quicker son. Very charming rune carving, I must say. We run into a mystery and a little bit of an issue to translate this stone because of the Bindrune. It kind of looks like a cross shape or maybe even a snowflake a little bit. The runologist who first looked more into this stone was named Erik Brate. He did an examination of this stone in 1899. He read this inscription as Pt4. And he translated that into Thor protects, so Thor protected or protected by Thor. And he came to a conclusion also after he looked into other rune stones from Denmark, for example. And on these Danish rune stones, Thor is being like prompted to bless the runes on the carving. And this theory that Brate came up with, it has gotten a lot of attention because it's pretty cool, right? With Thor blessing and protects this stone and so on. That's very badass. There's always a but when it comes to science and time for whatever reason. So the word siddhi that Brate wanted to connect to, I mean the modern form of that is skydda in Swedish, which is protect. In Old Norse that is sita, so skydda, sita, very close. The word for protection that he wanted to connect to Thor, it actually does not mean skydda or protect, even though it is similar to the word skydda in Scandinavian language today, or Swedish at least. Sita would be more about sed, and sed means custom actually. The verb sita would then mean customs. More modern translations think that this has something to do with customs somehow to Thor. And other runologists, they have thought that this might even be an insult to Thor. So it could actually be about the word seida, which we have talked about as well, which is creating magic. It could actually call Thor that he's a seidkar, he is a magical man. And back in ancient Nordic societies, that was something that women did. So basically, they're basically calling him a sissy. To me, it seems rather strange to at a memorial put down, since we have other runestones that are dedicated to Thor, that is calling for his protection and blessing upon the runes. I do not see really the connection why you would diss Thor on your last words from this earth on your memorial. So I do not see that really. I think, to me, this is my personal opinion now, you can make your own. My personal opinion, I think it is more likely that it is positive. It might more lean towards that Thor is protecting this memorial rather than the opposite, in my opinion. Then we also have the rune SÖ133. So SÖ133, somewhere around Nyköping, Sweden. And on this stone, the runes says, Ette raised this stone after Atte. Esbjörn carved. And here we can see another one of these cross-like Bindrunes. Pretty interesting, right? So are Bindrunes inherently magical in a historical context? Magic has to do with intention. I know I've talked about this before, but magic has to do with the intention of making something happen in a supernatural way. And if it is indeed so that this example I brought up about Thor, if he would bless the memorial or the runes on the memorial, if that is indeed true, that that is what the intention was, then of course they could be considered magical like that. It is impossible for us as modern people to say what the intention of a human being that has been dead for over 1,000 years was. I'm not throwing any shade towards like modern Bindrunes, but it is important to distinct a modern usage of something, like with the Blotspån and the rune sets that is sold today, for example. They were introduced in the 1980s, and that is very different from, for example, what Tacitus might be talking about. It is important to be transparent about these things and not make something ancient fit our own agenda, you know? Like not mix them up too much. You have to be transparent what we know about what's ancient and what we know about what's not ancient, and then you can make up your own mind how you want to translate all of that. So, are you doing good? Is everything okay? He says you're fine. So, let's continue to the last little section of this video about runes. And we're gonna talk about something that is very nice, which is, let's see if I can do this. Haha. So this is my caricature of a woman. We can say that this is me, because I'm a woman, so no one will be offended. This is me, and I'm a woman, so women and runes. Everything is falling apart. Let's talk about something that we usually never hear anything about. Women and runes. Where are all of the women, historically? Historically, the women are found in graves like everyone else, but you know what I mean. Where are they? So we have one confirmed rune carver that was a woman. Her name was Gunborga the Good. And even though she's the only confirmed woman carver, because she has signed her work, so to say, far from all runestones are signed by anyone, and a huge minority of them are actually signed. Here we have a confirmation that yes, women were also rune carvers during these times. And I do not buy for 1 second that there was one female rune carver once upon a time. Absolutely not. That is absolutely... As someone who's worked as the only female welder in a workshop, I refuse to think that just because I am the only female welder that has worked in those workshops doesn't mean that there are not other female welders out there. Even though it is not as common, it still happens. Life is not like this dramatic fantasy book. Of course there were other women that also were rune carvers. We have just not found their signed work. And we might have found their work, but it might not be signed. What we can take away from it is probably a bit more unusual for women to be rune carvers during these times. But what is more common is that women have dedicated runestones. They have raised these memorials and paid for them. There are more runestones that are dedicated to husbands and sons from wives than there are runestones actually dedicated to wives from men. Lastly, in this video, I want to bring up an exceptional rune carving that talks about a woman's destiny. And why I want to talk about this specific rune carving is because it gives us such a good detailed look into these times, how women had it back then. And what makes this so great is that this is a source from the time where it was happening. This is not a saga, this is not an Edda that was written like 500 years after the Viking Age ended, because that is the most common source criticism I keep hearing. Like,
well, they were written so long after, they were written during medieval times, they were written so...
This is a source from the time where this was happening. So that's why it's so exciting and I can't keep it in. I'm so excited. This is rune carving U29 and it is called Hillersjö Hellen, so the Hillersjö slab. And this is about a wife that survived all of her husbands. And this is also a long one. It has over 300 runes in it. So again, I will read it to you, I will show it, and then let's go over what it actually says afterwards, okay? Also, I'm not translating this into a word-for-word translation. I'm translating it into a way where it would be understandable in English for you guys right now, just so you know. So if you look into this stone and there's like, oh,
this word wasn't here, this is different, da, 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 da.
For me, it is important that I am not just citing everything as is. It is also important that you guys understand what it is that I'm saying to you. So yeah, let's go, let's get into it. Decipher these runes. Geirmund received Geirlög with her virginity intact. Then they conceived a son. Before Geirmund, the husband drowned. And then their son died. Then she took Gudrik to husband. He owned these farmlands. They had a child. But the young girl, her name was Inga. Her Ragnfast I Snottastad wedded. Then he died, and then their son. But the mother Inga inherited from the son. Then she had Erik as her husband, then died. Then Geirlög received the inheritance from Inga, her daughter. Torbjörn Skald carved these runes. Some Viking Age sunset beach right there. This is one of the more ambitious rune carvings I have ever seen, besides the Rök runestone. Again, it is over 300 runes long, but the detail to this story is so spectacular and it gives us so much about women in history. It is such a great source account from the Viking Age. There's so many names, I know, it might be confusing, but let me go over it with you. Geirlög, of course, wasn't just any woman during the Viking Age. She was very clearly well off with making these runestones and also inheritance and so on, you know. That's how history goes always. It is the richer people that we find the most traces of. Geirlög's story, it shows us both that women remarried during the Viking Age, a couple of times even. They could also have children with different men. And not only that, I mean, Geirlög inherited everything from her daughter. So Geirlög was first in line for the inheritance after Inga passed away, her daughter. So Inga inherited from her son. So it says like this on the stone. Let's go over it again because there's a lot of text and it's a lot. So Geirlög loses her virginity with Geirmund and they get a son. But Geirmund, the husband, he drowns and then their son dies. And then Geirlög marries Gudrik and he is the owner of these farmlands, probably where the stone was raised in the beginning. And he owned those farmlands and they had a child. And that child is Inga. And Inga, she goes on to marrying Ragnfast in Snottastad. But he dies and their son dies. But the mother then inherits the father's belongings from the dead son. So Inga inherits from her son what her husband used to have. And what happens then is that Inga remarries, she marries Erik, and then Inga dies. So left is Inga's mother, Geirlög, and Erik. And Erik was the lawful husband of Inga. So we have Gerlög here. And then we have Inga, her daughter. And then we have Erik here. Inga has inherited stuff from her son that died tragically. That he in his turn got from their father who owned land. So Inga has inherited this from her son. But what happens is that Inga marries Erik. And then Inga dies. So left to the inheritance then is Gerlög, Ingas mother, or Erik, Ingas lawful husband. In a modern scenario, Erik would be the one to inherit the stuff from his wife, of course. But in ancient Scandinavia, it seems like Gerlög, the mother of Inga, has more right to these farmlands than Erik. So we get to know from the horse's mouth, it was okay remarrying, it was okay having more children with your new partner, it was okay for women to inherit from their sons, or women to inherit from women rather than men inheriting from their wives. So Gerlög survived all of her husbands with a huge fortune, and she left these runes as a memorial. Absolutely fantastic. It is also not just Torbjörn carved these runes, it is Torbjörn Skald carved these runes. It was someone who was skilled with poetry and singing and making up stories and putting words in the most beautiful kind of ways, you know. So both a poet and an author, a skilled wordsmith with other words. Torbjörn Skald is also forever memorialized on this rune carving. There's so much to talk about when it comes to runes, but I have to stop here. Otherwise we are here for too long, you, me and Oskar, and he's getting tired, he wants some more coffee, otherwise he will fall right asleep. So I want to thank you so much for watching, listening, thinking, figuring stuff out with me, and I want to thank you for making Oskar feel safe to show his face around here again. He has missed you guys a lot as well. So you go on, you have a fantastic afternoon over there, or evening, or whenever you're watching this video. And I'll see you in the next one. Hej då!